Hello, everyone. My name is David Jimenez. For my research project, I've been focusing on the Merchant of Venice, more specifically Shylock, and how the influences of the time may have affected Shakespeare's creation of the character and the play. To begin with, it's important to note that there were no Jews in England at this time. So, as one can imagine, a lot was left to the imagination when it came to their perception. Additionally, this led them to be associated with antiquated perceptions. Also, there's the issue of usury. So, in the play, um, Shylock is a moneylender, which is similar to usury. And usury was looked down upon. It was a shift away from the typical agrarian society that had been so dominant at the time. So it was really new to people, and um, it was the Jews were associated intimately with it. It was a legal practice, though, even though it was looked down upon. And something interesting I came upon in my research is the fact that theater actually relied upon usury. Um, Shylock uses an example from the Bible, that of Jacob and the lambs, to add legitimacy to his money lending nature. So, some of the influences that affected Shakespeare, as I mentioned, there were no Jews at the time, um, but that doesn't mean that he didn't have some understanding of the way they worked based off of the literature of the time. So, a couple examples I came across in my research were The Prioress's Tale by Geoffrey Chaucer, in which a Christian boy is murdered by a Jew as he's walking home because Satan told the Jew to murder him. And after his murder, a grain is placed in his mouth by the Virgin, and he continues to sing his song, yada yada. Um, Based on that description alone, I think it's plain to see that Jews were portrayed quite negatively. Another example is the Ballad of Granadus, which is very similar in plot to the Merchants of Venice, and was most likely a source of inspiration for it as well. It also has to do with moneylenders and a pound of flesh being the bond, um, and it also portrays Jews in quite a negative light. Then there's more of a real life example at the time, which was Queen Elizabeth's trusted physician. His name was Dr. Lopez, and he was a Christian, having converted from Judaism, but he tried to murder the queen, um, which a lot of people cited his Jewishness as a reason for that. Even though he was converted, they still believed that he was practicing Judaism in secret and that he hadn't fully converted. Here's a couple pictures. On the left, we have an illustration of the prioress's tale, where the virgin places a grain in the boy's mouth, and on on the right, we have an image of the tale of Granadus. So, as I mentioned previously, Dr. Lopez had converted to Christianity from Judaism. And if we take a look at the writings of the time, firsthand accounts of Jewish converts, it's plain to see that they convert um, willingly. As so, in other words, they're not pressured to convert. Shakespeare portrays this differently in his play, where towards the end, Shylock converts as a sort of a way to repent for his actions. Also, as I mentioned with Lopez, even though he had converted, people still believed him to be practicing Judaism in secret, and that's something that came along with these converts was all the suspicion of others that they hadn't fully converted. So, with all this in mind, how does Shylock portray, or my mistake, how does Shakespeare portray Shylock? Well, if we take a look at Burke and at two, we have to remember that an audience needs to identify with the character. Um, and it's difficult to identify, or the way the audience may identify with Shylock is in a negative light because of the way he's portrayed. in terms of his actions and the rhetoric used by Shakespeare. So with this in mind, if we had to put it into an emotional grouping, it would be one that discredits Shylock and smears Shylock's image and portrayal. Thank you all.